like to call the February 28th Hartford Board of School Directors meeting to order. And we'll start with changes, additions, and approval of the agenda.
One change, Mr. Christie, is adding a discussion of the charter to the agenda specifically, and Mike Court, the chair of the select board, is online, ready to join the discussion when you're ready to have it.
Great. So since we have Mike with us, and I think a number of us have had thoughts about that. We can move that to the top part of the governance process. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Should we combine it with the town school meeting cycle changes since it's a similar topic, or should they be separate?
Yeah, we could put it.
Yeah, we can switch that order. Update on the funding might be a little involved.
Okay.
It
Seeing
is
nothing else.
related to that, but I just thought you should probably call attention to it specifically since
Yeah.
there's been so much concern.
Right. And with having the select board chair on helps, with that discussion as well. So
So I'd like to move that we accept the agenda as modified.
Second.
we have a motion and a second to accept the agenda as adjusted. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Update on state funding.
All right, can we switch the order? Is that
Start with Mike.
okay?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's right. We're
First two.
Sorry.
yeah, we did flip.
Yeah, I think it'll just flow a little better.
Yeah.
So,
So
I'm asking Mike to unmute, but hopefully he can hear us. Oh, okay.
Yep,
he's
I
ready.
can.
All right, great.
So Mike,
Great.
Yeah. We understand, that the way the warrant is written as it stands, the school district warrant has both the charter provision and the local option tax combined in its warrant. So from a voting perspective, voters looking at that would vote the school budget, the school warrant as one item.
Correct.
But yet on the town side, they'd separate them, which is good, could very well skew the vote.
If you don't mind, Coach, can I explain what's in your packet so people understand exactly what we're talking about?
Sure.
I included the warnings for the town and the warnings for the school annual meetings.
Yeah, the
So you can
sample
see
ballot.
exactly what was warned, and then I included in your packet the sample ballot for the town and the sample ballot for the school. So you can see specifically what the problem is. So in the first document is the second page of the town's warning, and item number 25 calls out or extracts specifically the local option tax from the town school charter changes. So they warned their articles for town meeting a little bit different than the school. They pulled out that item 25
Right.
as a separate item in their warning. And then they had the other changes onto item 26. All would be voted in a slate. So one vote for item 26, one separate vote for item 25. When we did our warning, not being as familiar with the charter and exactly what the select board wanted to do with the local options tax, I grouped them all together, as you can see, and had basically one item that included the entire charter changes with the local option
Right.
tax. So that's where the problem was.
Yeah.
In the town side, the way their ballot is set up, you vote separately for the local options tax, you vote separately for the charter changes. One could fail, one could pass. On the schools, it's all or nothing.
Right.
So when you have that kind of discrepancy in the two ballots, it causes a bit of a conflict. If everything passed, it'd be fine. But if it goes down on the school side, and not on the town side,
That's the problem.
it's gonna be confusing at best. So, we can let Mike talk to it, but
Sure.
given that okay, and then I can tell you some possible
Mm.
resolutions that we've come up with.
Right, right. Thanks, everyone. Good to see you. I thought you were going to be in room one, but I missed that. So I am in room one representing for you. But yes, Mike Hoyt, Select Board Chair from Hartford. I think Tom explained it pretty well. So there's a discrepancy between the town charter article and the schools. And the town chose to take out the local option tax as a separate item. Mainly because, we felt that that was, one of the most substantive and probably controversial provisions in the charter. And we wanted to give people a chance to weigh in on that separately, as opposed to the other changes, which aren't particularly controversial in and of themselves. And we got an email from a concerned voter who was voting. They'd already gotten their ballot and they were looking at it. And what their issue was essentially is, I like the non-controversial changes. I don't like the tax. So I'm going to vote against the tax, but for the charter change. And she did that, or the person did that on the town side. On the school side, since they're lumped together, they ended up voting no, right? So it's like they kind of negated their own vote, right? They voted for the non-controversial charter changes, then they had to vote against it, right? And so that's confusing. And so the town, we reached out to our attorney to sort of get some advice. What does this mean? What are the possible remedies? We heard from our town attorney and from an attorney at Vermont League of Cities and Towns. And their reading of the legislature's new act gives the school board the power to essentially like cancel that article and include it again when the budget vote is taken, sometime in March or April. So, I think ideally they would be similar. They would basically be the same sort of questions presented on both the town and school side. But this is of course a decision for the school board to make. But I wanted to be here at least to tell you what sort of our concerns were. And just sort of lay it out like all the possibilities of what you might consider doing. So,
Well, one of the things that that became very clear Monday night, because that concerned voter and others did approach us at Monday night's meeting. And in checking, like with council, it was within our purview to change that. So it needed to be part of tonight's discussion. So thanks for being here. And it's part of the solidarity thing. I think it's important anytime that we can and should be working together that we do, because otherwise, we'd be destroying the vote, potentially. But you have a question?
I do.
Yes.
So Mike, I think the way the charter works, that we're not holding anything up by having two separate votes, correct? Like there's no delay being caused by waiting 6 weeks.
right. No, because, for the charter changes to actually become effective, it's going to need to go through the legislative process in Montpelier. So whether they get a bill, from someone introduced like, in 2 weeks, or if it's, 6 weeks, kind of is what it is. They're approaching, they're getting closer to the end of their session, right? So that's, maybe a concern, because when you introduce a bill in the end of the second year, if it's not, if there's no action taken on it, it just sort of disappears when the new session starts up the next year. But I think a bill could be introduced then as well, because if this passes, then we've spoken, and it's just got to go through the legislative process. So there's no, we're at the beginning of we're the end of the beginning process, right? And then it goes to Montpelier, and we see what happens. So I don't think there's a concern with any delays.
Okay. And then my second question, just as a voter, is just kind of the general confusion about voting on the same thing on two different ballots. And how that, like, the board, our board said, yes, we agree with the changes being presented. And so
Right.
I'm curious what the legislative need for this to be on both ballots is, as an initial thing. And I guess we don't have to get into it tonight, but as a voter, it confuses me that I could vote yes and no in two
Right.
different places. And which vote actually is substantive? Does it need to be a majority on both ballots? I'm just unclear.
Right. And I talked a little bit about that because that sort of confused me as well. I thought approval by our board voting it out, approval by your board, maybe we just do one item. My understanding is that the history and tradition is to put on two items. That's what the moderator told me, and he has some experience with that. So I think it's kind of strange, but that seems to be the way that we've done it in the past. If we got a clear, signal, like we only need like one ballot item on the charter changes, maybe that would be great. But right now it sounds like this is how it's been done when there've been previous charter changes. Also, I imagine, right, like it has to be approved by the school board, or the school and the town. So if on the town ballot it failed and on the school ballot it passed, I don't think it will become effective, right? Because you have to have both
Exactly.
approvals.
Exactly. Okay. And as far as the legislative side, under House rules, we can take up charter changes at any point.
Okay.
So that's the only piece other than a suspension of the rules that allows for that to occur. So as long as we have a functional charter vote, we can bring it forward.
Okay.
The last time there were charter changes, we warned it, on both ballots,
Yeah.
exactly the same. It is confusing.
Mm.
You don't usually vote twice. That's against the law. but
Right.
in
That's
this
why I was
regard,
confused.
it's the way it's done.
Well, we are two separate municipalities,
Municipalities.
so
Yes.
made up of the same exact citizens, but we're
Right.
two separate legal municipalities. So, if I may,
Yes.
I think that there are two lessons to be learned from this, or at least one lesson and one action. The first two, which I think it's important that the select board and the school board communicate with each other better. And I'm not going to say it's any individual or board's fault. It's just we haven't been doing a good enough job on that. Most likely, mostly due to COVID. We were actually engaging in regular conversations and joint meetings prior to COVID. And when everything sort of fell apart during COVID, we lost a lot of that cooperative relationship. So this is a prime example of why it's important that we in fact engage in that kind of conversation. And now that there is a town manager in place for the superintendent to engage with, these things will hopefully get caught in the future. So I'd just like to encourage a return to the engagement we had in the past. The second, I think, is that I would urge that we in fact do what has been suggested, which is that we remove this from the ballot that is going to be voted on next Tuesday, and that we put it onto the ballot that's coming up, it's unfortunate that we have to have two elections, but we have to do that anyway because of the games the state has been playing with us. So we might as well take advantage of it to fix one minor problem.
So I think the language of the motion would need to be consistent with 850. So using the language of rescind,
Yes,
and that will take care of removing, that warrant for the rewrite, which will be included in
right.
the new budget.
So would you like me to make a motion or would somebody else like to? All right. I would therefore move that we, as allowed by the recent Act 850, rescind the item 4 of the warning and the ballot that are being presented to the public on next Tuesday. And that we instead redo those, separating out the tax option from the rest of the charter language into two separate items to go on the ballot that we are going to have to deal with our budget issues.
Does that seem to match what our council is?
Second.
So we have a motion and a second.
We do have someone in the audience that wants to talk if you're ready to do that or
Yes.
not.
Yeah.
Trying to be better, make sure we catch everyone. I have it actually up on the screen. Let's see if that works tonight.
Mm.
Make sure we don't. Hi, Michelle.
Hey, hi, thank you for calling on me. It's Michelle from White River Junction. So trying to be supportive, but I have to be honest, I'm so frustrated to hear this. And especially since I was on the charter committee way back, and did share concerns about the process with the school board who appointed me. And my concerns were dismissed. So fast forward, the charter's revisited in December, a year later after it was first presented. And it seemed rushed. And in any case, the 1% option tax, it would have been a great opportunity for the select board to have community engagement, to invite business owners and residents to come together to explain what it means, because I'm looking at Facebook, people have no clue what they're being taxed on. And they don't know what it covers, what it doesn't cover. Some guy thinks it's gonna lower his property tax and he keeps going on about that. And so, that's really, and then when I brought this up in a select board meeting, someone said it was preposterous that the select board should have to educate the public. And so I'm super frustrated. And I'm looking at people like on Facebook and listening to them ask questions, and people are so confused about this budget, about this election. And now here we have this. And Mike's shaking his head because he doesn't think people are confused. But I talk to people, Mike, and maybe the people you talk to aren't confused, but the people I talk to are confused. And, I'm just really disappointed. And it's not COVID, Peter. It's not COVID, the reason why you guys aren't talking. It's easier for people to go to meetings during COVID. Perfect example, there's Mike right there, calling in. So that's an excuse. And again, I'm going to ask you guys to do better, because I know what you're all capable of, but this is not fair to the residents of Hartford to confuse them. And again, example, the woman calls up, should I vote for this on this page and not vote for this on this page? I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So, I don't care if you don't believe, you don't agree with me, or you want to make excuses, or, but I find, especially when I was an educator, if kids aren't getting it and they don't understand things, I have to go back and look at myself and see how I'm teaching, how I'm communicating, how I need to improve. And when people sit there and they tell me, nothing to see here, I don't need to improve, that makes me really nervous, because nobody is perfect, and there's always room for improvement. So, just fess up to what you did wrong, or the mistakes that were made, and move forward and do better. And I keep asking you guys to do better. So I'm done. Thank you for letting me talk.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thanks,
Lisa's hand is up too.
Yes.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks for recognizing me. I won't take up too much of your time. The only piece I have that's unresolved, and I'm still working on it, is according to statute, as I understand it, I'm required to notify the Secretary of State's office of the results of the charter vote within 10 days of the election. So now I've got 2 elections.
Yeah.
And I'm just waiting to hear back from Jenny Prosser, the general counsel for the Secretary of State, who is helping with the elections division since Will Senning has moved on. So I just want to reassure you, I'll figure it out. But the timeline, there is a statutory timeline for the clerk who's impacted as well. And at the very least, I guess my plan will be, if I don't get a clear answer, to notify them of the town's vote and make sure they understand there is a supplemental vote from the school forthcoming on or before April 15th. I just want to make sure you all knew that I do have a requirement as well. So I wanted to throw that into the mix. So it's out there, not that it changes your action. As I said to Kevin yesterday, I don't have an opinion about the action. I just need to do my piece of it. And I wanted to keep you in the loop about that piece.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Lisa.
You're welcome.
I have one more question. Michelle, I appreciate your comments, and I do want to ask, we would not normally rescind our ballot for any reason, right? And so this is a scenario that is
You would.
available
allow
to us
that.
because of a different scenario.
Right.
What is the cross check? What is the catch on something that's like this? Who would have, could have, should have compared these two warrants at some 6-week ago date?
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
No,
No
in
plan.
the past, well, there is an explanation here. In the past, the town and the school used the same attorney.
Oh, okay.
So we used Paul Giuliani from
Mhm.
Primer, Piper and Eggleston. And he would have compared both sides and been like, oh, wait a minute. In this case, the town is now using via the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. We still use Primer, Piper and Eggleston, Elijah Emerson. And when I went to prepare the warning for all of you to sign, it was early on in the process, and I took the charter amendments and I had, put them into the warning. So Elijah and I worked on the warning that way. And I think it's my fault, if anyone's, but somehow between the town and the school, I missed the fact that they pulled the local option tax out of the amendments. And I think it was the right thing to do, to be super clear to the taxpayers. Look, this is more contentious. This is, something we want you to vote on separately in case you have concerns about that. The school, that's not really something we deal with, the local options tax and even the charter. It didn't dawn on me that we should do that same thing. I didn't even know about it until it was brought to my attention. So I think as the new town manager and I go forward, we're gonna be very aware of
Comparative.
this and making sure the attorney looks at both. Even if we use different attorneys, they could both look at both warnings to make sure there isn't anything. So
And the other thing that came up, and Lisa, I hope you're still on, was people being unclear about tally versus count. And the folks I have spoken to, I've said the machine tallies. So you can't not tally a ballot because the machine's gonna run it through, but it doesn't count, as in we are not reporting the tally to the public or to the state, correct?
If I'm permitted to speak, the answer is yes. So the tabulators do just what they are called. They will tabulate every ballot that is run through the machine. And as I said on Budget and Candidates Night, my plan is to take the tabulator tapes, so there'll be 3 of them for each machine, for any rescinded items on the school ballot, which now includes everything except the candidates. I will take a black marker and a Sharpie and cross out those results. And my intention is to either attach your minutes from this evening and your prior meeting that rescinded the budget and bond votes, and attach them to those tapes for the official record within my file, but also within the ballot bags. My preference would be, and I know everybody else has a lot to do too, is to have a 1-page recap from Tom on behalf of the board saying what meetings those votes were taken and what the action is, so that if I could have that by Monday morning, I could attach it to everything on Tuesday. But if I don't, I'll be prepared just to attach the minutes, because part of reporting to the state includes a really involved chronological explanation of all the steps related to how we got to having the charter on the ballot to begin with. All the warnings, all the, there's a big long list of things I have to do, and I've never done it before. So I have to bring together all those items, and this just is going to be another layer to it, which we'll work through, as I said. But that's my plan, is to cross it out on the tape, and those will not be publicized in my results on, the next day. And just, I know you've asked this before, Sarah, but I will not be publishing official results until I'm done doing the official results, and I have 48 hours to post them. So they will not even probably be the next day. You won't find them on the website, because the day after the election, the chair of the BCA and I sit in a room for almost the entire day, redoing all the results to make sure they match the unofficial results from the night before. And sometimes it involves making sure the write-ins match and things that were hand tallied. And I also have to report the presidential primary results to the state. So that will be my priority. But we have 48 hours to report the official results, and I take my time and I do it in a methodical way. So it's not instantaneous that people get them.
Thank you for all you do.
Thank you. Thank you guys for
Anytime.
all you do for select board as well. It's crazy times.
Thanks, Lisa.
You're welcome.
I'll let you know, I'll talk to Mike McCarthy in the morning, and make sure that they're aware, of that anomaly, on the charter side, because he's the one that would accept our motion to move the Hartford charter, through GovOps. So I'll check on that in the morning, and I'll get back to you and let you know what I find out.
Thank you.
Others? No other.
I don't think
popped
there's
up.
anyone else.
Seeing no other comments or anything else, I'd like to move the motion.
Okay, we're calling the question. So we have a motion on the floor in a second to rescind the
Article
Chart-
4.
the charter article, and move it along with the new budget. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So moved.
A couple other things before we move to update on state funding, if
Yeah.
that's all right.
Yeah.
Obviously with the rescission of the school budget, we have a new timeline.
Mm,
And we don't need to set that in stone today, but I think it's nice to give taxpayers and community members a little idea of what we're thinking, or at least at this point, what I'm thinking. I have sent some timelines to the board for you to think about, but you know, there's a lot of dates to remember with warning a budget and warning an election. And there's a lot of dates about the dates. So it's very confusing and very complicated. And then you add on the school side, 2 school vacations. So last week was February vacation. And if we're warning the new budget for a time when it's really thoughtful for people that are involved with the schools, you know, we're really looking at the last date that we can consider, which is April 15. Anything before that is school vacation week. And then the notices of warnings and the notices for the meetings are really, you know, during a time that people might be away or might not be paying attention to what's going on in school. And it's not that they're any more important than anyone else, but it's just being considerate of all the stakeholders. So I really think the vote, you know, they call it the election. In our case, we're really not electing anyone because you're doing that March 5th. The school board candidates are going forward March 5th. But they do call it an election because it's when you're going to vote by Australian ballot. So I think we're looking at April 15th. Again, that would be for the budget. And if the board continues to put forward the bond and now the charter changes. That would mean that by March 15th, we have to have signed the warnings and they have to be filed with the town clerk, Lisa O'Neill. So I think is that your next board meeting, which is the 13th, I need to present a budget and we need to work our way through your approval of the budget and thus the warning. And obviously there's a lot of other dates involved in there that I don't need to go over tonight, but you know, you have to have a hearing within 10 days of the vote, and that then you have to have a notice of the hearing within 10 days of the hearing. So,
And break is the 8th, correct?
yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
So that's why I was
There's
being,
no public meetings that can happen in the 5 days leading up to the vote on, if we vote
Right.
on a Monday. Okay.
right. That's why we
Yeah.
sort of are stuck with the 15th, because if we tried to move it to Saturday, the 13th, then the hearings are all messed up and your election is in the middle of or at the end of a vacation period, which just doesn't seem right. So as much as I was trying to accommodate the town clerk, given all the warnings and the 30-day, you know, warning period, we're kind of stuck. We also can't turn around the new budget really any earlier than your March 13th meeting.
Right.
So it seems like a far way off, but it is a very tight window.
So the other question, or an additional question, is will we do another informational meeting? You know, after the budget has been decided, like we did for this Monday.
Right,
So that has to be factored
Right.
in as well.
right.
You know, in
And
addition
we
to
have
meeting-
to, you know, warn the bond, and we have to have a hearing within.
Do we have to
10
start
days of
over with the
vote.
3
Yeah.
meetings about the bond?
I'm not sure we have to do that, but I think we should overdo our
Mm.
informational sessions on
Yep.
both the budget and the bond, just to clarify some of the things Michelle was talking
Yep.
about, the confusion. Once we have a new budget, let's over publicize it if that's
Mm.
even possible.
Coach.
Yes,
So before you disappeared for a delayed and much deserved vacation, you circulated a fact about the frequently asked question document about this. I thought it was very well done. I would ask that after a final proofreading, you get put on both our website and the town's website. And I would ask that you work with the town manager, because it's really, in some ways their issue and not ours, at least with respect to the issue of the charter change. And the issue of owning the budget, that's ours for this, but there's enough need to get it out as much as we can, that any site we can take advantage of should be.
Thank you, thank you. My idea with the FAQ that I created was to continually update that and sort of have a running, update of questions that have come up. Now that the board tonight has rescinded the charter amendments, making sure that gets into the FAQ, and
Right.
once you have a date for the election, getting that in, so that it's sort of, you can go to that one stop and say, oh, okay, I am up to date. I know what's going on, because there has been so much confusion this year,
And Lisa's hand is up again.
Yeah.
You may have insight.
Yeah, and Lisa's probably gonna be upset because she really wants to have it a little earlier, but hopefully she understands the window that I'm dealing with. Oops.
Hi, Lisa.
Wait a minute. Hear me? Can you
Can
hear
you
me?
hear it?
Yes. The host muted, then unmuted me. So here I
Yeah,
am.
I'm sorry. That
No,
wasn't,
you don't have to apologize. I understand the April 15th date. Tom and I had talked about that. It's kind of a quirky thing on Monday, but on my end, we'll make it work. But I wanted to talk about how soon I would like to see the warning in my office to make sure we can get it properly warned. So my understanding is you plan a meeting on the 13th of March, which I assume you would be finalizing everything. And then my hope is that Thursday morning, Tom and I will see each other with the warning so I can get it recorded. And Thursday afternoon, I can go to the 12 locations with the copy of the recorded warning to post them, because some of the places, including the libraries, don't have regular hours. And if I don't do it on Friday, I'd prefer not to work Saturday if I don't have to, and they're not always open on Saturday. So I have historically done the postings on Tuesdays and Thursdays in the afternoons, just because I can usually hit everybody. So I kind of have this routine, and I know that's very selfish, but if you don't warn it in the 12 places required by our charter, you've then missed warning it. And I've, as a courtesy, done the school warnings, because it doesn't make sense for us to usually be chasing each other around. So I'm hopeful I could have the final warning Thursday morning, March 14th.
So that'll have to be.
yeah,
And then Thursday afternoon, barring any major snowstorms that would close the libraries, I will be out and get them all posted. And then the clock ticks, because at that same point, that same day, I would take that information, draft the ballot to be sent to the printer. I probably wouldn't get a proof till the beginning of the following week, but I have to have ballots available in my office by the 26th of March. Otherwise, I have not met statutory requirements. And the statute H850 requires that I mail them to everyone who received the March 5th ballot. And that number is around getting to about 900 right now. And it's very time consuming. We have to fold the ballots, stuff. Again, this is very selfish, but I just want you to be aware of the timelines. But we will make it work. But that, I just wanted to toss that in there, and I'm sorry to take up so much time.
I really appreciate it, and I know what you're going through, and on the school side, we're going through a similar,
Yes.
tight timeline, trying to get a budget done in 2 weeks, and then 2 school vacations baked into the equation. It's crazy.
We'll make it work, and we'll work together like we always do.
I used to post the warnings myself, so I really appreciate that you do that. Took about
Nice to get out of the office once in a while.
took a half a day to drive to the 13 locations and
That's
post.
right. Yeah, it's several hours for sure. All right, I'll stop talking now. Thank you, guys.
I'm glad it works for you, though. I know
Thanks,
it's gonna be tight, but
Thanks, Lisa.
sort of, excuse the expression, but do or die on the 13th, the school board's gotta sign those warnings.
Right,
So
and then,
we have to have a couple meetings before the 13th to make sure everything's in order. We'll have to do that.
Well,
right,
that's
and then we'll do our piece so that the voters have their opportunity to vote, and, publicize as needed and answer questions as best we can.
Hmm.
So I think we can do it. And then there are just some logistical things about setting up for the election, which I think I alluded to in an email to Tom before. It'd be nice to set up the Friday afternoon before the Monday election, as opposed to trying to get volunteers in there and staff in there to get it set up. But those logistical things we will figure out.
Yeah, and just so the voters know, I think they may have heard this. I know all the elected officials have, but part of H850 provides funding for all of this additional cost for having, 2 town meetings, 2 sets of ballots, 2 mailings. We are
Yeah.
supposedly gonna get reimbursed for that, which is
And,
nice.
and we'll track that in our office, Tom, since we're the one who, I mean, I'll make sure I get you the information, but we'll be tracking postage and Board of Civil Authority and election worker time, the cost of the ballots and things like that, so that you'll be able to, whatever the reimbursement mechanism is going to be, you'll have all the data you need from our office.
And to answer Kevin's question, we will have several weeks in which to have informational meetings on the new revised budget and the
Mhm.
bond and the charter amendments. So,
Right.
because if we warn it on the 13th, you could have a meeting, anytime that following week, the week after that, and be within the window.
Hmm.
So you could realistically have 3 informational meetings if you wanted to. It's just those deadlines around the 30
Right.
to 40-day window to warn the budget. So any questions from anyone? About any of that?
Cool.
Great. I think that's all as far as the town school meeting cycle. He's gonna ask Jake to talk a little bit about any updates he has on state funding and just sort of where we're at.
I'm gonna keep it very brief because I don't really have any news from the state. But my fellow business managers have been talking an awful lot. As we can't just sit on our hands waiting for something to happen. One of the things that they did was everybody kind of did an initial survey of their budget information, what their budget increase percentages were looking like, what their spending per pupil was looking like, and then their tax rates, and then what everyone was using for the homestead yields. Because over the last 2 months, we've seen 7 different homestead yields, which the yields always change until they're finalized by the legislature, but it's highly unusual that for budgeting purposes, we're seeing anything different than what was given to us in December tax commissioner's letter. So majority of people are using the 9,775 or the 9,769, which were provided to the field about 20 days ago in early February. Obviously, by the time we passed our budget and finalized our budget, we were using the 9171 field, which at the time was the best information we had. So I'm recommending, I'm assuming that the yield's gonna go up, and I'm using the 9,775 yield until I hear better from the state.
The good news there is that using that yield, as Jake just specified, makes the reductions in our proposed budget decrease. So instead of talking about 3.5 to $5 million in reductions, cuts, we're talking about 2.55, which is still very significant, but a heck of a lot better than 3.5 to 5 million. Brings it down to more like a 5% reduction than 10. So it almost halved what we have to do, and so it's refreshing news compared to how bleak it was a week and a half ago.
Yeah.
Still significant amount of reduction, but much more manageable.
There's plenty of different ways to get there, and we're exploring all those options. One of which being using surplus funds from the FY 23 audit to apply towards the FY 25 tax rate. We're looking into all options as we start to put something together for you.
Yeah, the administrators met for a good chunk of today to discuss, ways to get at that $2.5 million without affecting things that are super important to all of us and our DEI work. We are working with Dr. Brown, who's a consultant on a diversity, equity, inclusion work around sort of a formula to categorize programs and our needs, significant impact on the kids and their learning. So it's really helping. I don't have anything to report out yet because right now we're sort of really studying and assessing everything that's, in the budget. But we meet again Monday, and then Wednesday, we should have some clarity to the direction we're going in. But so far, it's been a nice process. It's still hard news. It's still, really devastating to think about, reductions and cuts. We've worked so hard over the last several years to build things, but we're being very, very thoughtful and very careful about what we are thinking about. So everyone's, yeah, poor Jake. Jake's working double time. His vacation was interrupted.
We
Got
appreciate
me
it.
back.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. So obviously the yield number is a critical data point, for our calculations. And that is constantly changing as you get to May 6th. Because that's the target date, of the legislative enactment of that. So even though we have to build ours based on extrapolated numbers, that's why you'll see, when the public looks at, why did you have a surplus? Or how did that come about? It's because the calendars don't line up. Between the legislative calendar and the budget calendars for the schools. And that's been an anomaly since the beginning.
I like to make sure people in the audience know what we're talking about when we talk about yields and CLAs and some of the terms that really impact the school budget. They're foreign to the town budget. They're not something that you would understand unless you sort of do this work. So I'm gonna ask Peter if it's okay with Coach that Peter explained the yield. He does a really nice job of trying to make sense out of that convoluted formula that creates the yield.
So, I can't explain the entire formula, but I have worked with the yield issue and the common level of appraisal enough to have some idea of how they're supposed to work. They're two different but related ideas. One of which is the act which sets out the process for raising the state budget, which in turn funds the local school budgets, is to make sure that the value of houses that are going to be taxed is fair, so that a town which has not recently evaluated their grand list will be taxed at the same rate as one that did it yesterday. And they do this by going in and looking at the grand list and doing various statistical and real estate analysis to make sure that the grand list is adjusted so that it reflects for the purpose that they're going to use it, the actual value of the house. Now, you can always argue over what the actual value of the property is, but they're attempting to compensate for the fact that out-of-date data can be wildly off, either up or down. And they want to be able to adjust that to get to an adjusted grand list value for all of the property in Vermont that makes it level and flat across the entire state. And then once they have that, they come up with a number. And for the ease of explanation, let's say it's $1 billion. That's the total value of all the property in Vermont. Knowing what the total value of the property is, and knowing we have to raise $150 million, they say, okay, at what rate do we have to tax that property to raise the $150 million? And that's the yield number. So the two work together. One is how much money do we have to raise, and that against the value of the property. And the other one is adjusting the property values so they're reflective of the true value across the state.
And the grand list is the sum of the property value in a
Any given town.
or in the state,
Yeah.
as a whole.
Yeah.
So it sounds sort of elusive, but that's what grand list means.
And our town hasn't been evaluated in a long time, so we have a low CLA number.
Yes.
Which means we have a higher contribution into that bucket because our houses are valued at less than they, or are marked at less than they considered them to be
Right.
valued.
It's
It's a perfect storm.
yeah, it's a perfect storm. Basically, the internal logic of all the math is because our houses are now worth more than they're counted on the grand list, we are suddenly wealthier. We may not feel it, but according to the logic of it is we're suddenly wealthier, therefore we can pay a larger percentage of the overall money that the state has to raise for all of our schools. And when there is a disconnect between, I don't feel any wealthier, I don't have any extra money in my pocket. In fact, I'm paying more for groceries and more for gas and more for childcare. It feels really bad to be told that you're wealthier by the state, but that's the way the math works.
And that's a good depiction of it. On the national level, Vermont has one of the most complex education funding systems in the country. And that says a lot about Vermont in a number of different ways, one of which is we really care about our kids and we care about education.
And we care about equity. It's complicated because it's trying to be fair, but it also doesn't deal well with inflation. It never really has had to deal with inflation because we have had the longest period of extended low inflation in the nation's history. And all of a sudden we ran into a large bump in inflation that had to be absorbed by the system. And it doesn't work well then.
And our CLA has dropped for the last 3 years, almost 30 points. So
Right.
that's
Yeah.
really, really huge.
Yeah,
Propagates
if the
against-
CLA
look,
was at 1 instead of the fraction of 1 that it is, we'd have a very small tax increase.
it's at somewhere like 66% of 1.
Right.
So it's really low.
And it's happened all around the state. That's the other anomaly. Sometimes 1 or 2 or a number of different school districts will have that effect. But this has affected every school district in the state. Yeah. Just at different levels. Okay,
We kind of covered.
Yeah,
The
almost
first
all that,
third
haven't we?
Yeah.
Bond proposal?
yes.
Okay.
School bond proposal.
Mm.
I did want to discuss that tonight, make sure the board was still supportive of that. I certainly have had, people contact me about you know, the budget increase and the budget concerns that we just discussed for an hour, and whether the school board continued to want to propose the bond. So I wanted to bring it up in that light, make sure that people understood the bond and that we're still, you know, going to be explaining it and providing information about it, but I just think the board should have a little discussion about, you know, why you're still supportive of the bond or not, and sort of where we're at. Make sure the community knows what you're thinking and why you're thinking it.
I
I
would like
totally
for Sarah
support
to Sarah does such a good job talking about why we're want to do this bond. And I would like for her to do that explanation so that the people at home and the people here in our audience here.
Sure.
Is that okay with you?
Yeah, the spreadsheets are in the packet,
Yeah.
you know, if you want it, they're in the hard copy, they're online too, if you want to know what the $21 million is for.
So, I just a little background. This is what I do for my job. So I spend a lot of time with facilities and updating and purchasing contracts and those kinds of things. So one of the big things about the situation that we're in is that we have about 450,000 square feet of physical plant. And in any given year, we can put in 500,000 to $1 million in capital funds to keep our buildings running, facilities money, right? But the amount of money that is actually needed to support $450,000 isn't an amount of money that we've been able to put into budgets in the last 10 years. Is that fair?
Right.
And so while we do have capital reserves for facilities needs, we have a larger need than we've been able to save for. So one of the things that this bond is going to do is to both do some really significant life safety and student environmental improvements that need to happen. Regulatory, the fire marshal, there's a lot of like have tos and must tos. And then it's going to allow us to think strategically about how to make this not happen again. So it's going to allow us to do some long-term strategic planning about how our facilities are used and maintained and what we are doing with each of our spaces. It's going to allow us to look forward at the development that's happening in our area. You know, we are growing. We want that growth. That's going to help us with the property taxes in the long term. But in order to take that growth, we have to be very strategic about how we absorb it as a school district. The White River School can't take 47 more families because it's our smallest school. But if all of the housing is in White River, then what does that do to the White River School? Those kinds of questions are really key to how we move forward as a district. So this bond allows us it gives us some space to make a lot of expensive repairs that need to be made, health and safety, right? Just flat off the ground. It allows us to be really incredibly thoughtful about how we plan for this amazingly large footprint that we have. Like we really do, we have the luxury of having a really lovely campus amount of space for our kids. How we use that wisely, how we pay for that wisely and keep it up. And then it allows us to figure out how we absorb these extra families. So it's kind of a three-parter. It's kind of a heavy hitter. And then the fourth kind of not talked about part is that if we don't pass this bond, we have a much larger budget problem because we will have to spend $5 million on our buildings in the next 16 months, regardless. So the bond allows us to not have an emergency on our budget because if our budget passes and our bond does not pass, we have another large problem to deal with. So I feel really strongly that this bond, while I understand that there is a lot of interest involved in this bond, and I understand that there are other ways to look at this, I personally feel really strongly, both as a board member and as a taxpayer, that this is the right way to handle this because construction costs are not going to go down. Like there is no scenario where this amount of money is going to get cheaper. And just from personal work experience, I'm watching things go from 3 million to 5 million in 14 months, or a $15 million budget turns into a $23 million budget. Like
over the course of a year. So I think we also are in a financial, I think we have a financial responsibility to really think about where we are financially, where we are, life safety wise, and the impacts that this is going to have both on our short-term budgets and our long-term planning. That's a lot of words. Yes.
If I may, I want to make a couple comments
Yeah.
to the reactions we've gotten to the public when we brought this forward. One is, this is not the result of negligence.
Correct.
When I joined the board, we had something in the order of $30 million of identified backlog and unmet maintenance costs. We have been working as a board and as a community to resolve that issue, and we have been very, very successful at it. So what we're talking about is all the stuff which is small projects, which, if not dealt with, eventually become large projects, and they're not able to be dealt with by the regular maintenance processes. So they fit in between the regular maintenance process, which takes care of a lot of stuff, and the big enough to get a bond that we've been doing with some regularity, which is one of the reasons we have such a good physical plant at the moment, particularly when you consider where we started from when I was first on the board. And the second issue is that if you don't keep up with these things, it's suddenly not only the issue of, gee, there's inflation and labor costs have gone up and China is not exporting all the stuff to us for cheap that they used to be exporting because all of a sudden we're now in tiffs with them. No, what happens is, gee, you start to get a lot of holes in the roof and other things that don't get repaired. And before you know it, you're looking to replace an entire building. And that is exponentially more expensive than trying to keep up with this stuff. So at least from that standpoint, this is we save money because we take some of the expenses that we would have to put into our budget and found a way to get them off budget to some degree by spreading them over multiple years. And we avoid those, gee, the car just rusted out and we got to replace the brakes and the transmission and the differential. And by the way, the body needs work, so it's cheaper to buy a new car. And have you looked at the price of a new car now? So all of that together is very much a reason to be supportive of the bond. That said, I'm also totally aware of the perception that this is horribly inappropriate timing when the entire state is looking at massive tax increases, and people are particularly hard hit by the exact same economic factors that have resulted in those taxes increases. You know, this budget that we're now about to go carve into and make smaller was not an extravagant budget. It was driven up by increases in healthcare costs, increases in the fuel costs, electricity, everything else that we as a district need to buy. And we get hit by inflation on our home budgets. This district got hit by inflation in its budget. But there is a real question of the seamliness of bringing forward such a large bond at this time. And I think it's appropriate to address that issue head on. We're not doing the public any favor if we tend to say, no, you don't understand. No, we do understand exactly how difficult this is. We all actually pay taxes. We look at this, we're aware of that in our budgets because of the impact that it passes through to us, just like it does to our neighbors. But in our considered opinion, this is the least bad of all the different options we have.
And to Peter's other point, one of the other things about the ages of our buildings is there are things that we have taken amazingly good care of. And I'm going to pick on the middle school. The elevator in the middle school, the parts just don't exist. Like, you cannot continue to repair the object because you can't buy the panel that
makes it go to the next floor. So we have other infrastructure items in the buildings that are the same way. They're just at the end of their life. And it has nothing to do with how well they've been cared for or how much we can tinker. And, you know, I mean, Jonathan has been on eBay looking for some stuff. You know what I mean? Like it's not, it's taken very seriously. But we do have things, some heating pieces, some HVAC ventilation pieces, and that elevator, which I'll use as my big example, that just can't be repaired anymore. I mean, they're at end of life.
And the thing is, you know, that's happened, you know, in other locations. I think those of us that work in other areas of the state or, you know, in different entities have seen the same thing. You know, at the State House, there's 2 elevators in the State House. One of them's been down for the whole session. Okay, and when you think that there are days when we'd have 500 people traversing that building at any given point in time to utilize that one elevator, and because the elevator is at the end of its life, you know, I was talking to the technician just because, you know, it's cool talking to the elevator geeks, and they rebuilt that whole elevator. I mean, there are no old parts in that elevator, and it, you know, it took a while, but that's what they had to do because the other, like you said, with our 30-year-old elevator here, the same thing occurred. No parts, you know, no parts available. So, you know, it's some of this is, you know, a fact of attrition, and that happens. You know, it's just like a car. Eventually, you know, things will wear out. So, Jake?
Yeah, maybe Jake's gonna address this. I'll see if he does.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the only thing that I want to bring up, and I apologize to the public for not being more clear about this. What the bond for FY 25 is really self-funded because we're capping the reserve accounts. So yes, while we're adding $715,000 to the expenses, we're also adding $715,000 to the revenue to offset that. So as far as like, you know, hey, what does this do to my taxes? It's really a washout.
Neutral this year.
Yeah.
We had been saving money for the roof repairs at Dothan Brook and Queechee for the last several years because we knew eventually they're gonna leak so much that we need to replace them. We're at that point. We've been saving, trying to figure out exactly the right repair and when to do that. So that's where this money, you know, is coming from in the reserve.
And the idea was that, you know, we were really just slapping on a new roof, but knowing what we know now, it's really more
Insulation and mold prevention and ventilation
HVAC,
and yeah.
what we thought was
Yeah.
So if we're throwing that into the bond, the whole reason that saving reserve money is with those roofs, so it only makes sense to use that for the bond.
And just thinking about the life safety pieces, one of our fellow Hartford residents came up to me Monday night and, you know, was asking, you know, like, why haven't you taken care of all of this? Well, codes change. Life safety codes actually change. And sometimes the thing that was set at this level 10 years ago is now set at a higher bar. And when they move that bar, we have to jump. Otherwise, they can take our occupancy away. And it's at that, you know, level, you know, when the inspector comes, we don't get a bye because we're the school. You know, we have to do that, and it's to protect our kids and anybody that's in that building, you know, so anyways.
Couple
Yes.
things that haven't come up that I just want to add. You know, Sarah did mention the studying enrollment, studying catchment areas. In the next year, we have 100 new units, 100 new living units coming online. They're already approved. They're pretty much done.
Yeah.
In Hartford. They're all in the White River catchment area. So that's a now need that we have to, if those 100 units have, you know, they're 1 to 2 bedrooms, some 3. If they have a few kids, that's an increase in White River. We totally anticipate there will be an increase in the White River School enrollment. In the next, in the permitting process, there's another 260 units. Same thing, 1, 2, some 3-bedroom, all in the White River Junction, White River Elementary catchment area. That's a significant amount of increase. And we certainly anticipate quite a few kids from that 260 additional units. So we want to plan for that. We want to be thoughtful. We want to study what we have. Where should kids go? What can we do to adjust for that enrollment all in the White River catchment area, and be super thoughtful about it. It's also going to be a huge increase in our revenue from the state, because the way revenue comes in is through equalized, pupil counts. And if there's an increase in students, we're going to have an increase in funding. So I see it as a good thing as far as our budget, but we need to be ready to accommodate those children and those families. The other thing that's on that side is, must have been 10, 12 years ago when I was early in my tenure here, the board and I, during the budgeting process, really realized how important it was to attract tuition students. There are a lot of choice towns near us. So we became very deliberate about making our facilities as attractive as we possibly could. I remember the board ordering me to come up with a plan to increase our attractiveness and attract more tuition students, because they are so beneficial and lucrative. And we actually did that. That's part of why we built a fitness center. That's part of why we renovated the middle school gym and cafeteria. Part of why we did our campus over and made it a lot more attractive and a lot more sensical, if you will. as far
And
as how you
safe.
travel through the
Safe.
campus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Remember the old
It
traffic
was-
patterns.
It was appalling. And it's really had an impact. I mean, our tuition students amount to several $1 million a year in revenue. And they don't amount to a large increase in cost. If you add 20 students, 30 students, it doesn't mean you're adding 5 teachers. Just like when students move or enrollment declines, it doesn't automatically equate to a decrease in staff. So I think that's worth noting, that we've done a nice job with that, and we want to continue to be attracted and be supportive and have innovative programs and sort of be on the cutting edge. We've done really well with that. So we want to continue.
And my last thoughts are in addition to the catchment, the long-term facility plan study will really also offer an opportunity to look at the programmatic uses, right? Like clearly the theater parents are really interested in reevaluating how the music and the band room are used. That's another tuition student attractor too, right? Like a robust arts program. And then the athletics department. So like, how do we use these really thoughtful studies to drive attractiveness as well as functionality?
Yeah.
To layer onto that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that Hartford has to be proud of is the amount of land we have here on this campus and the beauty of it, honestly. I don't know too many high school, middle school campuses that have the long driveway and the beautiful trees that we have and the property that we own, on the frontage, where the Tenney house is, the maintenance shop, the Covell house, my office, the SOS. I mean, it's a beautiful piece of land, and it's primarily on this side of Highland Ave, and I just think that's very beneficial and something that's really an asset to the school district and the community. How we sort of long-term figure out how to use that to our benefit and do the best we can for the children is really, really special, and really something that this town should think hard about and carefully about what we do and how we do it. And that's part of the study, is being really thoughtful about it, not just, wholesale tearing anything down or wholesale putting something up. It's protecting that asset. They're not making any more land, as Coach likes to say.
Just not happening.
from my point of view, I think that we should continue with the board, with the bond on the warning.
Other comments?
I agree. I was originally skeptical of bringing it forth on this year in this financial environment, but that was well before we got hit by the state truck that plowed over us. But having had a chance to learn more about the thoroughness of the work that was done by the facilities committee and to understand the context it has to the budget, I'm very much supportive of the bond, despite the difficulties the current situation has placed us in.
We do have an opportunity on Saturday to explain it again,
Mhm.
so Jonathan Garthwaite will be present Saturday and Sarah, and if they can either run through the PowerPoint or the spreadsheets or both. It's
And
another
answer any
opportunity,
questions.
when people are coming out anyway to talk about it.
Well,
There's a hand raised,
yes,
and
yes. I think we're gonna wait, for, public comment, coming up. And
We're very close. We just need to get through
Very
the
close.
report outs of the,
yeah,
Mhm.
so Michelle, and we have a person here too in the audience that wants to talk. We'll wait till public comment in a
Right.
few minutes.
great. So we have, consideration that the board needs to make, on continuing, with our school bond proposal. Do we have a motion?
I actually don't think we need one, because we already have decided we were supportive. We have a vote in that degree. So the question is, do we go back and change our initial decision? And I don't see any support for revisiting the opinion. I think we can affirm our continued support without another vote because we already have the vote on the record. But if you would like to have a motion just to say that we still continue, I'm
Well-
willing to do that too.
Well,
But I
I
think-
think we need to continue.
Okay, all right, in that case, I move that the board affirm its commitment to bringing the bond forward, the public.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second to affirm the board's commitment to bringing the bond forward. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Thank you for having that conversation. I think it's really helpful to
Right.
address the concerns
Right.
I've heard from
Right.
all over the place.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah.
that's, yeah. For sure. And as we move, like through these things, I know it's hard for all of us. But I think the value of the work that this board is doing for you right now, and I look at some of our colleagues around the state, and I have a chance to, 2 seats away from me is, CVU's board chair. And she says she was the lone vote to rescind their budget. They went through with $103 million budget to the public without rescission. So that gives you an idea of where some of the other districts are in the state. Okay, and so if you look at the spectrum and what's going on, and we're all experiencing, these double-digit increases, I'm hoping that people understand that we're trying to be as respectful and responsible about this as possible. And that's, it doesn't make it any easier for any of us, both the taxpayers, and the board, but it's just the time we're in right now. So, committee updates, we did our vote.
Committee reports.
I think the facilities committee is pretty up to date.
Yeah, I guess we don't have.
Yeah, like a few seconds ago.
Right.
Likewise, the finance committee has been doing its transactions very much in public. And there have been no meetings of the policy committee, despite the fact there's a huge backlog of work, just because this has taken up all of our time.
Hartford Community Coalition, I have no report. I did request an update, but they're very busy right now. Going to some other trainings and some other conferences. Our paid staff is for Hartford Community Coalition. The SBA is, needless to say, just a little bit busy too. And so there's really no updates other than the updates that I send you guys on a weekly basis from them.
Cool.
That's it for me.
Doug, public relations.
The only thing I have to report, the PR people are waiting for us to come up with our final version so they can create some cheat sheets for us. So we're all singing the same music. But on a different hat, which I don't know, but I just want to make sure everybody is aware that this Saturday, our basketball team, the boys, are going up for the state championship. And it's the first time since 1929. And so they deserve recognition.
Thank you so much for that. And I guess we will, yes.
Can I ask to make a public comment when we go into public comment first? to
Okay.
Start things.
So we are now going into public comment and Peter is asked to make a public comment and then we'll accept other comments
Thank
from
you.
our guest here and on.
Thank you for your
On
kindness.
screen.
I just wanted to say, I've noticed there are a number of people in the audience who are teachers. And I wanted to say thank you for joining us and that we're glad you're here. We used to regularly have attendance by either the Teachers Association, the Hartford Education Association, or by various teachers, and it is wonderful to see them there again. So that was all I wanted to say.
Point well taken.
Come on up.
Come on up.
Yeah, we like you to speak from here because people in Cyberland
Can hear.
hear you and see you.
My name's Erica Fallon. I have 5 kids in the Hartford School District. They use 3 of the buildings. I am in favor of the bond. I'll just put that up, but I do have questions. And big question around the consulting and the catchment study. It seems like if we're expecting, one thing I don't see on here is if we're expecting more students, which will come from it, is this also going to study staffing? Like, if we get 30 more kids or 40 more kids or 50 or 100, will this account for if we need more teachers or bigger classrooms? Well, and I just a general question. Will that be?
So normally, I'll ask Tom to address that question. As you notice, we do have a cheat sheet of how we respond to questions, you know? So, but this, no, this particular question, as important as it is, and as big a topic as it is, I'd like to have Tom explain how those consultants work, because we've done this before, you know, just before Tom started. You know, we did that, you know, as part of the facilities, work back then. But if you could explain how
It's very fluid. And in that increases in enrollment, primarily it's going to be the principal of the building, myself, to figure out like how that impacts class sizes and where there are additional considerations for staffing, teachers, paraprofessionals, other services. However, in this case, obviously, we want the folks doing the studies to inform us too. Like, if they study, where the increase may come, we want to know whatever they find out. You know, oh, did you know that of the 100 new units, 35 of them actually do have school-age children, and they're all in grades 3 through 5, age 8 to 10. If they're able to discern things like that, obviously that's going to impact how the school and the administration are responding to staffing needs. The studies that I see being done here are primarily what we need help with is the catchment lines. If you look on the parent family resources part of the school website, there's a catchment map. So the entire town of Hartford is divvied up into 3 sections that some genius before me figured out. Because and the reason why I say genius is because all these years it's worked relatively well as we've had bumps and increases and decreases in them. Basically, it's the lines of like, if you live in this part of town, you would go to Adequachi School. If you live in this section, you would go to White River and Dothan Brook. And it's worked really well. You can actually plug in your address if you're moving here, figure out what school you belong to. But anyhow, given the new developments are all in the White River catchment area, we realize that White River School can't have a big increase. We're very concerned about how they would absorb 360 new units. I don't know how many students that really concerns or involves, but we're part of what the study is.
Yeah, I think one of the cool things about the consultants is all the formulas, right? All the math, like a 500 unit apartment complex brings in, 22.4% elementary students. And, these are all like national formulas that a good
They do.
consulting study will use. And another thing that they'll really do is we'll look at how we're using our buildings, right? Like, is it better for us to focus pre-K in a specific place? Or is it better for us to look at where our after school programs are because this building has an advantage? There's 1,000 ways, right? I grew up in a junior high model where 7th, 8th, and 9th were in a school together versus 10, 11, 12. Don't worry, anyone, I'm not making this decision. I'm just saying that there are lots of ways to look at how buildings are used, and that is also part of it.
Okay, so then that leads up to, with all that said, do we have consultant firms? Like we're like allotting an amount, do we have in mind? And then it's sort of the one item on all of the budget that seems like, does this actually cost $500,000?
Probably not. But in order to put out an RFP, we have to really, so the answer to your first question is no. We have not built the RFP because we don't have the money, right? So without the bond, yes, we don't want to put our chickens before our eggs. That's not right. Baskets, chickens, eggs, something. So we have not
Chicken
done
before
that,
the eggs,
right? But the reason why the money is like it is because often you'll put in an RFP and they'll ask you, what's your budget? And we'll say $175,000. And they're like, great, we'll give you A, B, and C for that. But also here's this a la carte menu. And we look at this a la carte menu and we decide as a town or a budget or however we do, we really do need to look at busing, right? Or we really do. So these numbers are good gross estimates that won't leave us in the hole, but I would not anticipate that all of those dollars would end up in a consulting firm's hands.
It seems
Right.
like a huge chunk.
Yeah.
When we're really
Yep.
diving deep. Okay.
Right.
Yep.
So
Right.
Okay.
But we also, we want to make sure we're prepared for the impact. What if, the study says this and we decide to reconfigure or at least consider reconfiguring the schools? That may lead to, we have to redo our busing routes. What does that look like?
Right.
Or that impacts one of the other buildings. How are we gonna,
And some of this impact will start before we're able to do these studies, if I'm hearing this right. If
Riverwalk
units are coming
opens.
On
Yeah.
We
Right.
do.
we might have some information before.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
the-
Because we have
the-
100
Yeah, that's
Probably
it,
delayed work
right.
For them, because we
Yeah.
have an impact.
You know, just
100
drive to
units
West
are coming
Lebanon.
online
and
this
you can
year.
See, you're,
Yeah.
it's
so,
almost done.
Riverwalk opens this spring.
Right.
If we're talking about Saturday and presenting this, I really feel strongly that we have pictures of some of the buildings, so anybody
Oh.
can see
Interesting.
at
Yeah.
the, town meeting day. There's a lot of people who never come into our buildings, they don't have kids, or their kids don't go to that building. Some visual representation, even a
Yeah.
slideshow or a video of somebody walking through the buildings. I really like the elevator in the middle school not working properly or can't be fixed or needs a new one. I think would be low cost, big benefit.
No, that's good. That's great.
What we're. looking
Yeah.
for.
It's better than looking at words on a PowerPoint, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, Absolutely. I've thought of that, but with everything going on, I haven't had 2 seconds to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then too with the, I don't think you're gonna rewrite, but like, when you're talking about, the catchment and, really. I don't know, maybe images of like, here's our buildings, can we really fit more, you know what I mean,
Mhm.
like. Images of our actual buildings, cause I know PR firm put stock photos up, and sometimes that makes you disconnected with what's actually happening.
Mhm.
No, that's great.
Um,
Great.
Wonderful.
Well,
Thank
well,
you.
thanks for the suggestions.
Yeah, excellent.
That was
Thank you,
very
Al.
helpful.
Michelle is online.
Michelle,
Hi, Michelle, White River Junction, Vermont. So I understand the need for the bond and I support it. However, I'm afraid because of all the confusion that there might be a possibility that it might get voted down. I'm going to make a suggestion, and this is something that we did when I was on the board. Is we had when we did the Wilder School, and we had a committee, and again, like the woman who suggested just before me, it'd be great to have visuals, to have a presentation, to have something to hand out to people. And as good as Sarah is excellent at explaining it. Thank you, Sarah. You actually helped me understand what's going on, and I think it's wonderful to do a study and to figure out the buildings and to project what's going to happen. I think that's really smart. And so I'm hope, one of the great things about the Wilder School was that we had community members involved, and we had a great person at the helm who's sitting at the school board right now, and somebody that people trust and know. And thank you, Mr. Heavysides, for that. And I just wanted to say thank you for serving. Thank you for filling in and jumping in and helping, and to continue to help. But that I thought that effort went really well, and people knew what was going on, and they knew what they were voting on, and they knew it was important. And I also think that it would be great to add a little bit of history, because people are really connected in this town to our school and the history of our school, and to be able to approach it that way and to really market it, instead of just numbers and we got to fix the building. This is a center of Hartford, the school. And so if it doesn't, hopefully it'll pass. If it doesn't, I would suggest, maybe looking at that and explaining all the things that this bond might go for or be used for and how.
Yeah,
I really appreciate that, Michelle. I'm gonna speak for myself and not for the board because we haven't discussed this, but I would not anticipate either of these studies being done in a vacuum. I would anticipate there being committees, community members, an outreach that says, hi, would you like to come participate in the long-term planning? Like, I would not in any way, I would be an angered citizen if that
Yeah.
is not the way the board handles this.
but-
So I really do want to encourage or, embrace that idea that I think that that is the model that would go forward on both of these projects.
But I'm also saying that if the bond doesn't pass, that I would use that model to I would reintroduce the bond, but then do these other steps to really educate people about what it's about. Because, just the way my mind thinks, all I see is $5 million in my head, and I don't see the story behind it. I like stories and I like storytelling. So, and then the other thing I just wanted to say is thank you, Sarah, as well, for stepping in and volunteering and being of service. And I really appreciate that. All right.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
Saturday is soon, and we will try to have some pictures for Saturday, because we do want to present probably similar to how we've already presented, but remember, we have now probably until the 15th.
Have some
Because to, re-educate or improve our presentation on the bond, take pictures, maybe do a tour, so
Yep.
we could really enhance what we're presenting.
Cool. Anybody else out there? So no other hands.
Glad
Anybody
I have so
else?
much help in
Yeah.
monitoring the hands. This is great.
Well, Chico came up with that
He
idea,
did.
and
is a
it,
good idea.
And the audience. can help
Transparency
us
holds us
too.
accountable, right?
The audience can see who's got the hands up
Yep.
too.
okay, cool. So that brings us to the consent agenda.
Do you want to add, since it wasn't warned?
Thanks,
maybe-
Jacob.
Thanks, Jacob.
Maybe you want to hold off till the next meeting, but the candidates' night's minutes are in your packet. So the meeting minutes from the 26th could be included in the agenda. Forgot to add that at the call to order.
If, I have a question about that.
Yes.
If it wasn't a school board call
Doesn't
meeting,
technically-
does it have,
No.
okay, that's, I was just
Yeah.
curious.
Technically don't, but we
Right.
do it as a courtesy
Right,
to
No, that
have a
makes sense.
record of what
right.
happened. The school board's always done that, so
Mm.
technically.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I was just curious if it
Mm.
was not a convened.
Since
But the thing
Sherry
is-
was there and took them,
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
like you
As
should.
well, as part of the motion, we can make the motion to include, that special event, that we participated in as historically done.
Yep.
In the motion.
There are a few appointments, all right, so there are no appointments or resignations, but there's several retirements. Nancy Burke, who is a teacher at the Ottaquiche School, 5th grade. Tim Hebert is a counselor here at the HACTC. Carrie Lynn Bristow is a Spanish teacher at the Ottaquiche School. Julie Arnold, who is a special educator at the Regional Resource Center. Virginia Stone is 4th grade teacher at Ottaquiche School. Sandra Rhodes is a 5th grade teacher at the Ottaquiche School. And Jan DeCosta is a special educator at the Wilder School. So a lot of longtime veteran staff that are retiring and going to be greatly missed.
All right, I'd like to move that we accept the consent agenda to include, even though it's not on what we had warned, the Monday, February the 26th budget discussion and candidates night. And that we thank those departing our district and remind them that no matter where you go and where you end up, you'll always be our again.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So moved.
Coach, may I make that?
Yes.
Thanks. Because Sarah is, this is her last official meeting here with us. So Coach has got to sign it since I couldn't get you away from it. We'll let it sign.
Okay.
And for those of you that don't know, Sarah is a avid gardener. She loves to work outside in her yard with all the flowers and all the beautiful plants, and she has a beautiful yard. So what we have given her then is a gift certificate to the gardening center.
Thank
And you can
you.
go get what you want.
Oh
and
my
put it in your
goodness.
garden.
I love
Okay.
it. Thank you. I have really appreciated this opportunity and my family circumstances did not allow me to run, which is why I did not run for this seat. Garrett is going to be amazing. But I have appreciated it and I hope that I can continue to serve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kudos.
Thanks.
Indeed.
I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah,
We'll
you know,
hold you to
right. No, I think she's already said that.
We got it on the
And-
record. It's
right,
now in the
No, it's on
minutes.
video now.
That's right.
It was kind of emphatic, you know. So our meeting evaluation. And the next board meeting is March 13th, regular board meeting, but it's highly probable that we'll be having special board meetings between now and then as well.
All right, so board monitoring report. One, the board was prepared for the meeting, satisfactory. Board's time was spent on ends, not means, satisfactory. Each board member was given the opportunity to participate, satisfactory. Board treated all persons with courtesy and fairness, satisfactory. Board adheres to Robert Rules of Order as appropriate or necessary. Board adhered to its adopted governance style in that it emphasized outward vision. It encouraged diversity of viewpoints. It exercised strategic leadership, not administrative detail. It maintained the distinction between the board and staff's roles. It used collective decision-making. It looked to the future, satisfactory.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank
you.
You wanna make-
And
Yes, and there is a need to go into an executive session. And we don't have the that sheet yet. Oh, it's right there. I think you have, you do.
Oh, we do have it.
So I wanted to use the official language. I move to find that premature general public knowledge regarding a discussion of evaluation of a public employee will clearly place the board at a substantial disadvantage because of the board risks during its negotiation strategy, or in this case, the review of performance. If discussing in public, and I move to enter into an executive session for the purpose of discussing the evaluation of a public employee pursuant to 1 VSA 3:113A3. So,
Second.
so we have a motion in the second to go into executive session. And we want to thank everyone that ventured out this evening to come and be with us.
this was the first time we've had a meeting where I was driving here and it wasn't dark, but still I appreciate it.
So thank you so much.
Want to take a quick break?
Yes.
While we're getting-
So all in favor?
2 minutes.
Yeah.
Aye.
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 And we'll